How many of you are old enough to remember the mashup era? Well, for those of you who don't know, back in the early 2000s, developers were mixing and matching APIs to make all kinds of cool, unexpected apps. It was such a fun and creative time in web development. You'd See, one of the most iconic mashups was the combination of Google Maps with Craigslist. And you search for real estate, and instead of just getting a boring list, you'd see all of the real estate mapped out for you. This mashup was called Housing Maps, and it turns basic search results into a visual interactive experience. I know that this doesn't seem revolutionary now, but back then, y'all, this totally blew our minds. You see, the developer who created this, they did so before Google Maps API was even a thing. It was literally just a regular dude named Paul mashing stuff together. And everything was really close back then. So being able to pull from not one, but two different vendors to create something new was slick. Developers started mashing Google Maps with all kinds of things like crime data, local events and concerts, even restaurant reviews. And this excitement and demand is actually what led Google to release the Maps API. They realized the potential of letting developers build on top of their platforms. And once Google opened the door, everyone followed. Other major companies started providing APIs too. And it was the beginning of the API economy as we know it today, where open APIs became the norm and developers could build entire ecosystems around popular services. Another iconic mashup from this era was combining Twitter with Flickr. So you could tweet out your latest photos directly from Flickr. And this was before Twitter had built in photo sharing. So this was like a game changer for social updates. And it wasn't long before developers were mashing YouTube with Twitter to enable video posts as well. Developers got really creative. There was a Netflix and a Rotten Tomatoes mashup that showed your movie ratings right in your queue. Back when Amazon was a virtual bookstore, y'all remember that? There was one mashup that connected your Amazon purchases with Library Thing to help you organize your book collection. And there were even mashups that scanned your iTunes library to let you know when your favorite artists were coming to town. What a time! There was no shortage of innovation and fun. Now, you may be wondering, well, if mashups were so amazing, why didn't they last? Fair question. And let's talk about a couple of reasons why they kind of fizzled out. So, one of the biggest issues with mashups was maintenance. APIs would change, they get deprecated, just disappear sometimes. One day your mashup worked perfectly, the next it was completely broken. And keeping up with all of those changes became a nightmare, especially since most of these mashups were just side projects for developers, you know? They get excited about an idea, they'd hack something together, put it out into the world, but because these projects were born out of curiosity rather than commitment, they lack that long term support. Well, I really miss the creativity of those days, which is why I'm so excited about MCP. It's bringing back the same energy of the mashup era, but in a way that could actually work long term. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and it's an open standard that lets AI agents talk to different APIs, tools, and data sources in this clean and consistent way. You can think of it like a universal adapter. So instead of custom coding every integration, you just plug in these things called MCP servers, which are basically wrappers around APIs, and the agent just knows how to interact with them. And this setup makes it super easy to build mashups because everything just plays nicely together right out of the box. Like I said, MCPs work with AI agents. And an AI agent is a system that takes action on your behalf. So think of AI chatbots like ChatGPT, for example. They're conversational and they tell you how to do something. So AI agents take that a step further by actually doing the thing. So they can make API calls, they can generate and execute code, and they can trigger other actions as well. Now, MCP isn't a requirement for AI agents. In fact, many companies are building closed agents that work specifically within their apps, which is cool, I guess. You describe what you want in natural language and the AI handles it. So there's no need to hunt for settings and stuff like that. And that's extremely helpful. But the second you need to bring in anything outside of that application, you're out of luck. So that's the beauty of MCP. With MCP, agents aren't boxed into an application. They can connect to any tool or service that exposes an interface via an MCP server, kind of like the Mashup era. But instead of wiring everything together manually, the agent figures it out and does the work for you. Oh, we're back, baby. Fun, fast, creative integrations, but now way easier to create. So Anthropic launched MCP in November 2024. And my company Block, as well as a few other companies, helped out with the spec. And let me tell you, developers are hyped. The hype is real. And a lot of that is because MCPs are completely open. Anyone can build an MCP server, even if you're not the API provider. So there's SDKs to do so in TypeScript, in Python, Rust, Java, Kotlin, and C Sharp. The servers themselves are open source. They're LLM agnostic, so they work with any model, and they're agent agnostic, so they can work with any AI agent that also adheres to the MCP standard. So it's been a little over 6 months now, and there's already a massive ecosystem of MCPs, over 4,000 of them, in fact. And the wild part is that less than 500 of those are from the official vendors of those APIs. The rest are made by everyday developers, folks just like my guy Paul from the Mashup days. So developers everywhere are seeing the potential and jumping on board. And as go the developers, so do the companies, right? So in the last couple of months, we've seen an explosion of companies launch support for MCP because they realize, y'all, we are doing this with or without them. So they might as well join the party. MCP is on every tech CEO's mind and was a major focus of the big conferences this year. We saw it at Microsoft Build. We saw it at Google I/O. Like I said, the hype is real. But let's not rely on hype alone, right? Let's actually look at some fun MCP mashups. So I'm going to use Goose, which is an open source AI agent built as an MCP client. That means it works with any of the 4,000 plus MCP servers out there and lets you choose whichever LLM you want. So we're really seeing the full potential of MCP here. Let's create one of the most popular mashups of the early 2000s, but with MCPs. So I asked Goose to make an interactive map of restaurants nearby. And it first uses the Google Maps MCP to get the location and then to also search for nearby restaurants. Once it has this data, it uses the developer MCP to write the web page. Then it uses the computer controller MCP to open it in a browser. And there you have it. We have an interactive map of nearby restaurants, all done in about 30 seconds. So, with just one natural language prompt, Goose mashed up several tools: the Google Maps MCP to get the data, the OpenStreetMap API in Leaflet.js to provide the map tiles, the developer MCP to create the web page, and the computer controller MCP to open it in the browser. This is the modern day mashup, y'all. We're combining data from various APIs and local tools without manually wiring them together. Let's look at another mashup. So here's the Figma design. And to access this from my AI agent, I need to add the Figma MCP. So I'm going to install this and provide it with my Figma access token. I also have a couple of other MCPs enabled, such as developer and computer controller. So let's make a mashup that asks Goose to take the Figma design and use the developer MCP to actually create the website using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Within less than a minute, Goose has mashed together these two MCPs to complete my task. Now let's match with the computer controller MCP, and we're going to have the agent open the website for us. As you can see, the site looks just like the design. So with my MCPs, the agent handles combining the tools, integrating the services, and getting them working together. And this integration is not something that I need to maintain. At any given time, I can ask my agent to do something like this. And even if any of these MCPs change, my agent is going to grab the latest version and figure out how to work with it. This is why I'm so excited about MCPs. They're dynamic, they're flexible, and they're just plain fun. Now, let's see how else we can use MCPs to simplify our developer lives. How about setting up a new project? This is a practical task for any developer, right? So I want to set up this Git diagram project locally, and it has an extensive stack complete with front end, back end, database, AI, deployment, you name it. And there are also great instructions here on how to clone the repo, install the dependencies, configure the environment, spin up containers, start the database. But y'all, this is a lot of manual work, and I prefer to spend my time on better things. So I'll give Goose this repo and have it do it for me because why not, right? So Goose is using the GitHub MCP to get instructions from the README file. It goes on to clone the repo. It checks if PM is installed, which it isn't. So Goose takes care of that for me. Then installs the dependencies. It sets up the required environment variables. It attempts to spin up a Docker container, but notices that Docker isn't running. So it opens Docker and I get a prompt to authenticate, which I don't mind doing manually because y'all, I'm not giving these agents my passwords. Okay. So great. Goose notices that Docker is running and it continues working. Its next step is to start the database. So Goose notices that the database isn't set up yet. So it tries running the script to start the database, but it runs into a little snag because the database needs a password. Goose takes care of this, generates the password so that it can continue its work. And now it has the database running. The last step is to start the front end server. So I'll go ahead and test Goose's work by checking localhost in a browser. And let's see. Voila, the environment is successfully set up in less than 2 minutes, I might add. So Goose finishes off by letting me know the ports that everything is running on. It also tells me that I'll need to add some API keys to the .env file, which it was unable to access because I restricted this file in something called a Goose ignore, kind of like git ignore. So with a GitHub and a developer MCP mashup, we're able to automate common developer tasks on the fly. So we've seen some cool mashups, but I want us to take a step back, look at how all of this actually works. This is a really simple example of an MCP server. So there's an official TypeScript SDK available in the Model Context Protocol GitHub org. However, community members have been making these fast MCP SDKs that make MCP development even simpler. So we create an MCP server instance and we give it a name and a version. And this step is basically setting up your server's identity. And then next, you're going to want to add tools. Okay. Tools are one of the most important aspects of agentic AI. AI agents are able to execute API calls via tool calling. So we add a name and a description for the tool. And y'all, please do not foobar this one because this gives the agent context about the tool. And that's how it's able to figure out if this specific tool would be useful for whatever task it's trying to complete. Okay, so next are parameters. Just like a function, if you want a tool to do something, you need to provide arguments in many cases, right? So this is specifying that two numbers are needed when calling this tool. And then you provide a body specifying what happens when this tool is called. And you can add as many of these tools as you need to. So here's a tool within a GitHub MCP that fetches the latest commit message for a given owner in a repo. So the name of this tool is Get Latest Commit. There's a nice, clear description here, which helps the LLM know the purpose of this tool. Then in the execute function, there's the API call, and it returns the latest commit message. So nothing too crazy, right? And here's what's going on behind the scenes. So we have the user, which is you, the agent, which is an MCP client like Goose, which has access to tools that are part of the installed MCP servers. And then we have the LLM, which makes the decisions. Okay. So the user gives the agent a natural language prompt, like asking Goose to set up a project. Sounds simple enough, but there are quite a few steps involved, like setting up the directory, initializing the repo, creating the README, committing the changes, right? The agent takes the user prompt and it sends it to the LLM along with a list of the available tools. So the list of tools are from all MCPs that are enabled. So this list can be quite long, and many of them aren't necessarily relevant to the task. So as a user, you can add as many MCPs as you want to your agent, but don't have them all enabled at the same time, because every MCP can have multiple tools. Giving the LLM a gigantic list of tools, some in which may overlap, can cause some confusion. This can slow up your response time, and it's also going to eat up your LLM tokens. So instead, when you start a session, enable the MCPs that may be relevant for that given task. And some agents like Goose will do this smartly for you. It'll figure out which ones should be enabled for the specific task. Now, once this is all sent to the LLM is going to interpret the prompt, it's going to evaluate the list of tools, and then decide which tool call should be made, and it's going to share that decision with the agent. So now, here is where those tool descriptions from the MCP come in quite handy. So this gives the LLM enough context to make a decision on whether to use it or not for a given task. And the agent then executes the tool call and informs the LLM of the result, and also updates the user on what's going on. So that was just one step of the task. Remember, we have a few steps to set up the repo. So this loop continues until the task is completed. And the beauty here is that you don't have to worry about how all of this gets stitched together. The LLM dynamically chooses the right tools, and the agent manages the entire process. And don't watch it. Go get yourself some coffee or something while it's working. So there's lots of places where you can find directories of MCPs, or as I like to call it, the MCP toy stores, because y'all, I quite literally feel like a kid in a candy store every time I go browsing for MCPs. So the first directory was the official MCP repo. So they launched with a handful of MCP reference implementations like File System, GitHub, Google Drive, Slack. This directory is not updated often. So while it was the official list last November, that was an eternity ago, it's become outdated as the community members have made more sophisticated directories. For example, Glamour AI. This one is really nice. It has a report card feature, which I really like. I go here when I need to suss out an MCP. It'll let me know if the server is secure, if it's of high quality, if it's licensed appropriately. And this report card is regenerated every time there's an update to the repo. Post MCP is my favorite one. So I love how clean the UX is here. And you can see some indicators of popularity of an MCP by the number of downloads and GitHub stars. And then Block, my company, is working with GitHub and Post MCP on an official MCP registry to serve as like a unified catalog of MCP servers. With MCPs, we're bringing back that creative spark from the early 2000s, but in a way that's practical for modern development. So whether it's for productivity, creativity, or just plain fun, the flexibility of MCP means you can do more with less effort. And the coolest part is that it's not just the big companies driving this. Developers everywhere are building and sharing their own MCP servers, so there's always something new to try out. If this got you curious, I encourage you to give it a try. We are having an absolute blast mixing and matching MCPs. You can start by choosing an MCP client as your AI agent. Of course, I recommend Goose because it's open source. You can use any LLM you want. It's available as both a desktop app as well as a CLI. It's good for more than just coding, and it comes with a couple of built-in MCP servers that you can use right away. Then you should explore the MCP directories. So you'll find thousands of them already available. And if you can't find what you're looking for, you can always build it yourself with an MCP SDK. So go mash things up, make something fun, and share it with the community. Thank you so much.
Yes, now I'm back. Perfect. Thank you so much for your beautiful presentation. It was lovely hearing from you and learning from you. You always have amazing presentations.
Thank you.
So, we have some questions for you. Are you ready for them?
Mhm.
Perfect. How do you see AI agents changing the role of traditional web developers?
Yeah. So there is quite a change. However, it's not as drastic as some may make it. So, there's a lot of people that might be kind of over exaggerating the effectiveness of an agent. It is quite effective. I'm quite a fan of it. But I use it a lot to delegate stuff. For example, that setting up the environment. I don't like to set up environments, right? And I'm always running into some sort of error. Perfect thing to kind of delegate off to an agent. Or even as I'm writing code, there may be some of the smaller tasks that I can write my code, but I say, hey, can you go and do this? I just finished a feature. Can you write the unit test for it? And now I'm starting on the next thing. So it's working in parallel with me. And it's essentially like my little intern sitting next to me that I can just kind of give smaller tasks to. Now, you can't vibe code with these agents and make a complete application, but they're better like as prototypes kind of thing. Usually, this is not a one-shot thing. You can probably iterate and stuff on it, but it's a lot of hand holding to it. So I definitely think that we're good, we're safe, but you are much more effective having this as a sidekick.
Thank you. And let's go to another one. What are the security considerations when connecting AI agents to multiply APIs?
It is the wild, wild west out here right now. I'm going to be very honest with you. And so a lot of people are looking at the security implications and things like that of these various MCP servers. And so the MCP service can be hosted locally, like, you can kind of run an npm command or whatever. Those are the ones that, if you don't look at the code or whatever, you could get tricked. This could be malicious. There could be like, just malicious intent baked in to it. The remote servers are a little bit safer since they're not installed, but they could also provide tools that kind of tell the agent to do something harmful to your system. So you definitely want to be careful. It is, while I encourage like the open source nature and developers creating things, don't just pick like random Paul's MCP server and like plug it into your system. If you're going to do that, suss it out, but also check out the ones from the official vendors. So they are coming around. They recognize this challenge and problem, and they are providing official MCP service for their APIs.
Mm-hmm. And how do you handle API rate limits and reliability when building with AI agents?
Yeah. So the rate limits are real. Hopefully you're working in a place that'll provide like some really good plans. So at my company, we don't run into the rate limits because we have like the enterprise plan or whatever. But as an indie developer who's building on their own, you might run into some API rate limits because the agents are moving so very fast and completing your tasks. And so what you'll need to do is a couple of options. One is like upgrade if you have the money, right? But two is also you can use something called Open Router. So Open Router does really good in handling API rate limits. You can even set up a couple of different models and it'll kind of pace it out so that you're not hitting those so often.
That was a great answer. And what is the most uncommon use case for an AI agent?
Yeah. So guess what? My company actually like everybody is using AI agents across the company. And my company is 12,000 people. So across 15 different job functions, not just engineering, legal,
Mhm.
finance, marketing, sales. Everybody is using AI agents with MCPs. And I'll tell you all, the non-developer people are more creative than us and they're doing all sorts of amazing things. But like one of my favorite cases, like real world, they have connected a Snowflake MCP server to Goose, the AI agent, and they're now able to do things like query a database in natural language, but not just querying the database, seeking patterns like this big large amount of data. You may not have been able to do a lot of this stuff manually, but it's detecting patterns of like fraud and stuff like that. And so we were able to find like where people are kind of gaming the system and be able to correct that right away. So, I mean, I could go on for days with these uncommon use cases. It's blowing my mind actually to see how others are using AI agents.
That's pretty amazing.
I know.
And one last question for you. What's your prediction for how this technology will evolve in the next 2, 3 years?
Yeah. Okay. So I think that, I mean, it's really hard to make predictions and this stuff is moving so
Yeah.
fast, but here's what I think. So I think the web is about to change quite drastically actually. So if I'm paying attention to the signs, things like I was at Google I/O, I saw the eight agentic mode in search, where I might say, hey, I want to buy some concert tickets, and then it spins up a dynamic widget to say, okay, here's the tickets. Do you want to buy? And I'm clicking a button and I'm making a purchase right there from Google search. Same thing with a lot of these AI agents. People are exploring. Kent just talked about it in his talk before me.
Yeah.
People are exploring adding like UI stuff to the agents. Right now, it's very text based. If they have a question, they're going to ask me this series of questions. I'm typing it out. You know what I mean? Frankenstein move. But they're about to start just generating a widget for you and asking the questions or whatever. So we're going to move to an intent-based web. I think same thing with websites. People are not going to go looking through menu items to get to stuff anymore. It's going to be very kind of natural language, spin up UIs on the fly. That's where I think we're going with this.
Thank you. That was a perfect answer. That was it. Thank you very much for being with us and presenting this wonderful presentation.
Yes, of course. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.